Hi guys, welcome to the Headphone Show. For today's video, we're going to do a quick first impressions video of the Mytek Liberty DAC that's in this box right here. This is not going to be a full review because this is literally just my first experience of actually using this. And what we're going to do is we're going to compare it against the IFI iDSD Micro Black Label through the Kine IHA6 amplifier with the balanced output. And we're going to use the ZMF Verite here to test. If you guys hear any noise in the background, that's either my laptop's fan spinning up. I sincerely apologize for that in advance. All right, let's check out what's going on inside this box here. I was fortunate enough recently to get a chance to check out Mytek. They're a company in New York. And I got a chance to go there and meet some of the guys and see their setup for designing and testing and everything. So this is a company that's based out of New York. I think they're designed there and then they're manufactured in Poland. I could be wrong about that. But in any case, so you get this manual here, which I'll put there for now. Some cables. Unbox that. Should I throw this? Probably. And here we have the unit. Now we are unboxed. All right. So this is actually quite a bit smaller than I was expecting it to be, so that's really nice. It's a decent form factor. There's rubber feet here on the bottom, so it's not going to scratch whatever you put it on top of. So I'm going to put that there for now. Close up this box, get it out of the way. So as I was saying, I got a chance to hang out with the Mytek guys there in New York, in Brooklyn actually, and that's what a lot of their products are named after. They're really well known for their Brooklyn DAC, which is the higher end version of this. This is sort of the smaller baby brother of that one. But there's a lot of the same performance going on here. Apparently, I haven't actually tried it yet, so we'll find out. I think the main difference is that this one is more focused towards just being a DAC and headphone amplifier, whereas the Brooklyn DAC is more feature-rich. It's got a phono pre, I think, and this one doesn't. But there's a very good chance that with a lot of this stuff, the sound quality ends up being pretty darn similar, if not the same, because a lot of the same ideas end up going into, you know, these smaller units as well. You know, I've often wanted companies to take these DACs or devices that have crazy amount of features and come up with something that's a little bit smaller, a little bit less expensive, but has the same essential engine to it. And I hope that's what's going on here with the Liberty DAC. Oh wow, this is a much longer cable. I like that. You can't really see it back here, it's very small. This is the Micro Black Label, and it has a much shorter cable, but it's just an on-the-go cable. You could use whatever you want, I suppose. For anybody who is new to DACs and amps and all this stuff, everything that you play audio out of, any source that you have, whether it's a laptop or a phone, there's some sort of DAC there doing the digital to analog conversion. And what's going on with these two units here, the idea is you remove the DAC that would normally be here and getting all the interference from everything else that's going on in the computer or a phone or something else, and you put it in a standalone unit that's specifically designed for sound output. So your digital signal, which is, you know, the ones and zeros that are being produced by whatever the music that you're playing is, because it's a digital file, is being converted into an analog signal, which then goes out through something like this, which is the analog connectors to a big old amplifier like this. Now, just to talk a little bit about what these are, the Mytek Liberty DAC is based on the ESS chip, and the IFI Micro Black Label is based on the Burr Browns. Now, there are obviously different types of each chip, but the main difference that I like to point to with these two that I've noticed in the past is that ESS-focused DACs tend to be a little bit more analytic, a little bit more clinical, a little bit more crisp in the highs, whereas the Burr Browns tend to be a little bit on the smoother side. But I have heard implementations of each that kind of contradict that general thought process. So I don't think it's as simple as just saying one has this type of sound and one has this type of sound. There's a little bit more to it than that. But nonetheless, there is a history of these sounding a little bit different from one another. Keep in mind that for both the IFI Micro Black Label and the Liberty DAC, you have an amplifier in both of them. Weirdly, the amplifier in the IFI Micro Black Label is more powerful than the amplifier in the Liberty DAC, but it's very likely that what's going on in both of them is good enough for like 90% of the headphones that are out there. I'm using the ZMF Verite here because it is 300 ohms for the headphones, so it does take a little bit of power there to drive it. So we're going to see, first we're going to see how this does on the Kine IHA6, which once again is just an amplifier, and we're using the balanced output because the single-ended outputs are not particularly good. And then we're going to try it with the single-ended cable on both the Micro Black Label and the Liberty DAC from their respective headphone outputs. The main reason for doing this is because we want to be able to get an assessment of how the DACs perform with the same amplifier. And so my hope is that we'll be able to hear a noticeable difference. What that difference is, I'm not sure. And, you know, I know that there's folks doing measurements of all this kind of stuff, but really when you get to stuff that's, you know, high performance, evaluating based on measurements and giving recommendations, it's kind of like saying one headphone's better than another headphone because it goes to 40k hertz instead of 30k hertz, even though human hearing doesn't go past 20k hertz. Really, I've come to the conclusion that that stuff is just silly. And so really what we're going to do here is we're just going to do a first impressions based on experience. Plug this in with the RCA. Plugging it into the back, and make sure that everything is plugged in. We get the ZMF Verite going here. For anyone wondering, this is a very high-end flagship dynamic driver headphone. Oh my god, I can't do this upside down. Is there anything going on with this one? Let's see. It looks like the lights change depending on the volume. And make sure we select the right source. Okay. You guys can't hear what I'm listening to, but it's Cineeg, I don't know how to pronounce it, We've Just Begun, which is a fantastic track for evaluating mid-range texture. But, okay, so with the Burr Browns, yep, definitely is that smooth kind of sound that I'm used to with a lot of the IFI stuff. I generally like it because I find that with a lot of headphones that are a little bit more on the analytics side, they can be a little bit sharp at times in ways that I don't want them to be, and the Micro Black Label does help with that. Now moving to the Liberty DAC, we'll give this one a shot. You know, auditory memory is very difficult, so what we're going to try and hope for here is that there's a significant enough difference where we can tell without having to worry too much about, you know, the time in between. If it's memorable, that's when it matters. All right, let's give it a shot. So using the Kain IHA6 with the ZMF Verite, my preference is clearly for the Liberty DAC, but it may also just be the case that it's a preference for ESS with this specific headphone, because the Verite is already fairly downsloped, warm kind of sound. It's got that sort of lush and, let's say, euphonic kind of lower mid-range, and it's particularly dipped there between 3 and 5k hertz. So areas that might be a little bit more shrill aren't on this. And so there's not really any need to use a DAC that is a little bit smoother, and instead I think it's probably better to use a DAC that's a little bit more analytic sounding. You know, I reviewed the IFI Pro iDSD, the flagship DAC that they have, and I tested between the Micro Black Label and that one, and there was a big difference. There was a clear difference as far as, you know, clarity, textural qualities, depth, separation, all that stuff. And with these two, in the treble is where I notice it's almost as if there's like a more well-defined outline around all the images with the treble, or anything that tokens treble frequencies. But now let's try using this as a DAC-Amp combo and using this as a DAC-Amp combo as well. So we're going to compare the same two units, just not using the Kain IHA6 as the go-between. First up, the IFI iDSD Micro Black Label, same track. All right, now let's try the Mytek Liberty DAC. That's a satisfying click, holy smokes. It's as if in the upper frequencies, there's a more well-defined outline around everything. It allows you to focus on textural qualities and image structure a little bit better. Yeah, wow, okay. So the difference is much more noticeable using the single-ended outputs of each of these, but that may also be just because the amplifier in here is a better amplifier, whereas with the IFI Micro Black Label, there's just more power. To me, there is noticeably better clarity coming from this unit when using it as a headphone DAC-Amp combo than there is coming from the Micro Black Label. Now, keep in mind that with the Micro Black Label, I would pair this a little bit better with something like maybe a Hi-Fi Men Sundara or, you know, something from Bayer Dynamic. Something where it requires a bit of power, but also you'd want to smooth it out a little bit more. Whereas with the Liberty DAC here, I almost said Brooklyn, this is definitely more analytic. So this, yet again underscores that difference between ESS and Burr Browns. But remember that the headphone amplifiers here make also quite a bit of a difference, because the difference between the two wasn't as noticeable when I was using the Cayenne IHA6. So for sound, yeah, with the ZMF Verite, I would go with this, the Liberty DAC, over the iFi Micro Black Label. This is clearly better for this headphone in particular. The iFi Micro Black Label, I think the main benefits here is its versatility. So, you know, maybe you buy yourself a, you know, Dan Clark Audio Aeon 2 closed or something like that. This would be a good combo for that because it has enough power to drive it easily, and it's also portable, just like that headphone. Whereas for the more, you know, sit at home state, you know, sit at your desk kind of listening stations, you know, compared to higher end DACs, I think this actually stacks up really well. I'm actually legitimately surprised here, because I was not expecting it to perform as well as it does as just a standalone unit. If I compare this to the Pro iDSD, is there a truck backing up? If I compare this to the Pro iDSD from iFi, which is, again, their flagship, this gets surprisingly close at a much lower price. It's not just about, you know, forward or relaxed. It's not just about, you know, analytic and upfront and, you know, laid back. There's more going on here as far as textural separation qualities. Part of the track that I'm listening to here that I'm testing this on, there's a brass section, and it hits they're all hitting a very specific note, and you can isolate all the individual different instruments very well with this, whereas with the Micro Black Label, you can't do it quite as well. They tend to blur together a little bit more. And that doesn't mean that they sound bad, it just means that it's not as pinpoint for surgical accuracy and, you know, instrument separation and that quality. Whereas with the Liberty DAC, it's definitely there, and again, it reminds me a little bit of what's going on with the Pro iDSD. So iFi's flagship does that as well, and that's really where I noticed those differences. It's that sort of, you know, precision separation quality that you can only really get with higher end DACs that you don't really get with the lower end ones. Now, I haven't gone over, you know, all the specs and what everything else it can do, because really this is just a first impressions video, but I did notice one thing, and it's that the volume dial here is not fixed to a specific point. So you can spin this, and it doesn't stop. There's very noticeable steps going on here. So it's like not completely smooth the way that, you know, this is completely smooth. This is definitely stepped. You know, when I was turning it like this, the volume went up at a much slower increment than when I turned this. And same thing with the Micro Black Label. There's more physical turning for the amount of volume that it goes up, which was interesting. So just thinking about this now and what it's good for, this would actually be perfect for, you know, my situation where I'm sitting at my desk and I would just have it there on the desk and then potentially pair it with a more powerful amplifier like this one here. I have the SPL Phonitor X in there as well. So, you know, there's a number of different amplifiers that I could hook this up to, but that single-ended output here with just what's going on here on its own actually sounds really, really good. So for a lot of headphones, I probably wouldn't need to use the more powerful amplifier. It's only when you start using stuff like, you know, low sensitivity planar magnetic headphones that you want to move to something like this, or again high impedance headphones like the ZMF Verite. But again, the Verite probably does better on a tube amplifier, so that would be another interesting test to try out at some point. But in any case, this is a very interesting DAC-Amp combo, which if you have a headphone that's a little bit on the warmer side, or a little bit non-fatiguing, a little bit smooth to begin with, yeah, I recommend this. Actually, I'd be curious how this would do with like an HD650 or HD6XX, that sort of entry-level Sennheiser, which it scales really well, and I'd be curious to hear how it does with something like this, because once again, those do really well with ESS-based DACs as well, because they are a little bit smoother in the treble already. But yeah, I'm looking forward to spending more time with this. While I got a chance to check out the Mytek headquarters and talk to the guys there. This unit in particular was sourced through headphones.com, so big thanks to those guys, and I'll leave a link below where you can find this as well, along with links to what other people might be saying about this in the community forum, so check that out. In any case, that does it for this video. If you guys like what I do, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video.